Colourful radio.
Hello and welcome to the second hour of Self Central with me, Lisa Bent. I'm here till 1 p.m, so stay with me to hear the music, feel your rhythm and get back to Self Central. The theme today is self-love with a focus on self-care, and all month we have been paying attention to prostate cancer, and rightly so. However, today we're talking about self-care in a more general sense for all, and as usual I'll be joined by Rasheed Ogunlaru shortly, so stay with me because we're going to be discussing this much more. Now, also, I have been asking you about what or who you appreciate. That continues. So if you're still thinking about it or you already know, then please let me know. So is, what do you have to do to improve your self-care? So that's the main question for today. And again, you can let us know by tweeting at Colourful Radio, calling 0203 475 6878, or you can email me via the Colourful Radio website. So after this track, I'll be joined by Rasheed Ogunlaru, the life coach. And remember, if you have any questions or any concerns surrounding this, which is self-care or self-love, or maybe you're in some conflict at the moment, or you have boundary issues, whatever it is, Rasheed can help you and give you some really good tips, some great nudges and some good advice. I'm joined by Rasheed Ogunlaru, the life coach. Morning, Rasheed.
Hey, a very good morning. How are you doing?
I'm really well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very, very well. And I was just thinking, whilst the wonderful Bob Marley was playing, that he's right, because the sun is always shining. And I think for me, that's got a link with our talk today, you know, about self-care and so on, because sometimes you may not always see that, but the sun is always shining. Heart's always beating. So there's always an opportunity. There's always a chance. There's always life and well-being. There's always that possibility for some level of well-being and possibility. And I think that that's really important here with this whole thing about self-love and self-care. So I'm very looking forward to today's topic.
Brilliant. Now, before we go to a track and then start the topic, what or who do you appreciate today?
Family. I was with the family yesterday and with my young nieces and young nephews and with the family. And it was just great. You know, just that,
simple things.
Some simple things. It's fantastic. It was just good seeing everyone.
Brilliant. Okay, so we're going to play Saving All My Love for You by Whitney Houston. And when we come back, we will start this conversation of self-love with self-care.
Colourful radio.
So that was Saving All My Love for You by the wonderful Whitney Houston. And as we were listening to that track, Rasheed and I were actually talking about this song because Saving All My Love for You. So she's got all this love, and I'm just wondering how much of that love she actually gave back to herself, because remember, the title is Saving All My Love for You. That means she didn't give any to herself.
It's interesting, isn't it? Lots of songs are about that thing about loving somebody else, which is great. It's all very well, but you don't often hear that sentiment that I really love and I appreciate myself. And the problem in that situation of, let's say, that story, whatever the story of that song is, that, as you say, somebody's saving all their love for somebody else. Is there any love for yourself? Do you really appreciate yourself? Do you actually know that you're worthy of that relationship yourself? Because until you do, it's going to be so difficult for anything that you're wanting to happen. And so our theme today is so fundamental, this thing about self-love or self-care, because if you don't love yourself, you don't care for yourself, you're not going to get up in the morning. You're going to feel really low. You're going to feel very depressed. You're going to really struggle with any situation when any situation comes in that's challenging, or somebody says something to you, it might knock your confidence. So self-love is absolutely the foundation point of everything that you might want in your life. And often I think that with this whole thing about self-love and self-care, you know, I don't want to go too deeply into it, but you'll know because you're the expert in terms of the counselling field. But very often, because if somebody hasn't had a nurturing upbringing, very often you'll often see that they don't have that real self-love, or they'll be really self-deprecating in terms of their own life. So it's really important to step back and ask ourselves, actually, do you really appreciate yourself? Do you really love and do you care for yourself? And what's your relationship with yourself like? And that's my first question to you if you're listening to this at home. What's your relationship with yourself? Do you love who you are? Do you really appreciate who it is that you are?
And that's a really good point, because as you said, you know, if you have come from a particular background and you haven't been loved, then more time than not, you'll be spending your adult time trying to search for the love that you never had as a child. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you are caring for yourself. You're actually looking outside of yourself to get that love that you didn't get before. And that, as we know, can put you in many, many different difficult situations. And, this week on the bus, I think it was Friday actually, Friday, I had a really, really hard day at work. I was tired, got on the bus, and this lady just sat next to me. She just started talking to me, and I could see on her face she was stressed. When you see stress, that the eyes look like they're, the water's going to drop at any time. So she told me her whole life story, and it was really horrific. And she, in a nutshell, was with an abusive man. She had her kids taken away from her. She loves the man, and the other night he went round to the house and he said to her, you've got to put the pictures of the kids down. I don't want to see them pictures of the kids. And that is quite traumatic. She's had her kids taken away partly because of this man, but yet she still loves him. And she was saying, I don't understand. Like, they're my kids. I'm trying to get them out of care, but he just doesn't care. And as she was talking, I looked at her neck and I saw some marks on her neck. And then she said, the other day, he strangled me. He tried to strangle me, but I love him. And it's like, how do you help someone like that? Because that's just an example of someone who's saving all her love or putting all her love into someone else while still loving her kids, but she's in massive conflict. And that's just a very, very small example of how something can play out. I have no idea what her background is, but I would not be surprised if she had a difficult childhood, hence the reason why looking for this love in this unsavory relationship with this man who clearly doesn't love her.
A couple of sides to that. I'd say, first of all, on that level, because I think it is far more common than often we discuss, it's so great that we're just discussing this side of it, because it does get to that point where people feel very low in themselves. There's depression, there's abuse, there's abusive relationship, and the knock-on effect that has on for their ecosystem, the children, everything else. So first of all, practically, if you do find yourself in that situation, know that there is help, know that there are those domestic abuse charities and so on. So look up help. There are places like Samaritans that you can just call and speak to anonymously. I was a volunteer in the past, so there is a lot of support there. So sometimes you'll find yourself in that place. But I think that there can be this, on a more everyday level, there's often a lower level of this that people may not even day-to-day recognise in themselves, because of perhaps messages that they had about themselves that they weren't good enough, and so therefore their self-esteem, their self-care levels might well be low. So I'd ask yourself, do you often feel as though you have a low regard for yourself? Do you find it really difficult to take care of yourself? Do you tend to put yourself last in every situation? If so, then you need to do some self-love. You need to do some self-care. And I think there are some simple things that can do it. And you were talking about it, I think, in the beginning of the show before I was here. I think there's a few things. So I'd say pick up whichever of these things might be useful. It might be, first of all, just getting outside, getting some sunshine, fun enough. And even, I know it's even winter, but getting outside, getting some fresh air. Sometimes nature is very nurturing. Walk in the park, by the sea and so on. It has a very powerful effect, because sometimes we're cooped up, and often we find ourselves, if you feel that your life is quite constricted, you might be in four walls that are quite oppressive. You might need to literally get outside, and that will suddenly give you just more headspace, because you're not tied in. Sleep. Just try and eat healthily. It doesn't need to be expensive. Fruit and vegetables and so on. Those things will give you the nutrients that your body needs. Sometimes isn't it interesting that sometimes just going, the times when you just go home and you just treat yourself to a really soothing bath, sometimes the physical can be that way into taking care of yourself, because you are with this shell all the time, that's taking care of yourself. So by you starting whatever level gives you that way in, it might be the body. You might think, actually, I'm going to have a soothing bath, or I'm going to go out for a walk. It might well be the mind, where you're reading something that's a nourishing text. You might be religious, it might be other stuff, personal development you're drawn to. Find something, or those people who do genuinely care about you. But in a situation like that, for that lady, she's got to find the people who genuinely has her self-interest at heart.
Yeah.
Because you've got to ask yourself then, what does love actually look like in a relationship? What should it actually look like? How it should be showing up? Is it somebody shouting you down? Is it somebody attacking you? Or is it somebody really telling you how wonderful you are and giving you the space to be yourself?
Exactly. So that brings me on to, I don't know, I always go by titles sometimes, but the next track is Jennier Hudson, Why Is It So Hard? So let's have a little look at what she's expressing, and let's just try and tie that into what we're discussing.
So hard to love you, but this is the one time I don't care about the easy way.
Colorful radio.
So that was Why Is It So Hard by Jennier Hudson. And in the context of today, where we're talking about self-love with self-care, you know, there's a part in that track where she says, why is it so hard to love you? And if we change it to why is it so hard to love you, as in me, as in I, then yeah, let's try and break that down, Rasheed.
It is really interesting because I think lots of people who listen to this can identify with that. You know, if you think about it, you talked about one situation of this person who's trapped in a relationship that's clearly not healthy for her and no doubt for her kids. So let's face it, on all sorts of levels that people will be demonstrating behaviour that's not self-love. Let's say there's there might be bad relationships, and constantly bad relationships, falling for the wrong man, the wrong woman, the wrong whoever it is. There's that. Often then there's all sorts of habits that people will be doing that aren't good for themselves. There might be gambling, there might be addictions to all sorts of things. There might be just all sorts of things or situations that somebody puts them in, that themselves in, that's not safe, or, you know, or just it might be just friendships that are really negative to us. So I think we will all identify on one level that often some degree of this, of where we find ourselves in this situation. And one of the reasons why it is often so difficult is often what you get is cycles of where people have been in this situation. So it might well have been the situation that one person's experiencing might be exactly the same as when they grew up. So that might have been the same relationship that they grew up in, the family situation that was very dysfunctional. It might be that lots of people around them are dysfunctional. So that's one of the reasons why it is so hard. Also, sometimes on a practical level, people feel as though they don't have time. We're so caught up often on the day-to-day. I've got to sort out my work. I've got to find a job. I've got to do whatever I need to do. That sometimes this feeling about the self-care, the self-development seems like a luxury, but it's not. I mean, we were saying this.
And do you think that's part of the problem, though?
Yeah.
It's like, you know, you've got all these other things to think about, but you come last.
Yeah. Well, one part of the reasons I'd say is that we're taught lots of practical things at school, but we're not taught about the emotional sides. We're not taught about how to build a really good relationship with ourselves and others. So we're taught the biology. You know, it's interesting. I know that one of the things that you can talk about, or you might touch on, is that tomorrow, for example, is World AIDS Day.
Yeah.
You know, health is a real interesting side, and I know that you, Colourful, have been doing stuff in terms of prostate cancer, lots of cancer awareness and so on. You know, one of the things that's interesting, isn't it, that we're often taught technically about stuff, but we're not taught about emotionally. So that means we're not often taught how to develop a good, nourishing relationship with ourselves, with our body, with people who we know, with everybody, with the world that we live in. So that's one of the reasons why it's often so hard, because we're not often taught it. You know, sometimes we're lucky that we have, sometimes we're unlucky. So the thing I love about coming in to do shows like this is it's that opportunity, whatever age somebody is, 15, 50, to go on that journey to first of all realize, you know what, I am worthy of caring for myself. I'm worth it. You know, it's that thing we hear on when it products, I'm worth it. But do you know that you're worth it? You know, that's my
really,
that's what
you're worth it without a thing, without a product.
Right.
Without the links effect, for
talking.
example, you know.
Now you're talking, Lisa, because the thing is that often when we think about ourselves is that we feel good about ourselves when the makeup's on, when the clothes are on, when the suit's on, the power suit is on, blah, 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 blah. But do we really love who we actually are? We love ourselves when we've been to the gym and so on, but do we love who... I've got a strong belief that you've really got to accept yourself as you are today. That's my real challenge to anyone who's listening to this. I really invite you to just embrace who you are today and find one thing that you really love about yourself. It might be that you've got a wonderful sense of humor, a great smile, lovely eyes, whatever it is, find that one thing that you love. Because when you do find the thing that you love, because very often when you don't have self-love, you're blocking out absolutely everything else. So you forget, like the first song, Sun is Shining. We forget the sun's always shining. You can't always see it. You won't always see it. Sometimes it's on the other side of the world or whatever. Yeah. Sometimes the cloud's in the way. But you've got to know it's there. You've got to know that your own magic is there. And that's the invitation of this, just to find often one thing that you appreciate about yourself. Find people who appreciate you, and you'll then find that you can begin to turn around a situation from where there's been no self-love or even self-abuse or, self-destruction to a place where you can think it. And this happens to all of us. It's not just everyday people, but we were talking about this off air, isn't it? Well-known people, celebrities.
Yes.
Just because somebody's one, very often it's often pronounced in those because people feel that often we're only worthy when we've achieved this, that, and that, and that's absurd, because nothing else is, none of the things that you will ever have will give you that comfort of just appreciating who you are. If you're trying to find it in somewhere else, something else, someplace else, anything, you're not going to find it, but you will find it in your own heart.
And I've said before, the whole concept of fame is really fleeting. I mean, think about it. You are only when a camera's in your face and the flashing lights go off. Once that stops, there is no fame. That's it. There isn't. You're just the same with the same person.
Well, it's interesting. And many people, many celebrities, the moment when the cameras are off, and that's a huge name, often when there's no performance thing, often many of those people find it really, really difficult.
The struggle begins,
because then who are they?
Yeah.
Who are they? So you've got to in life, I think this is so important, because you and your body and so on, you're going to be with you for your entire life, however long that lasts. It's the one constant. Everything else will come and go. So if you do not love who you are, it's going to be a battle.
It sure is. And that brings me on to the next song, which is Best Friend by Ledisi. You are with yourself for the rest of your life. You may as well be your own best friend.
Colorful radio.
So that was Ledisi, Best Friend. And so before that track, we were actually talking about, loving yourself, being your own best friend, hence why we put on Ledisi. And, you are on a journey. You are with yourself for the rest of your life. So you may as well be your own best friend. And Rasheed, what would that journey look like? I mean, in the first hour, I did speak about boundaries and within it the power of no, in terms of self-love and self-care joint together. But what would the journey of being your own best friend look like?
I'm so glad you asked that. I think first of all it is about accepting yourself as you are now, knowing that okay, there are some things that I might want to improve, some things that could be enhanced, but broadly accepting yourself. I think it's about accepting life so far. It's about making peace with yourself. I mean, you were just saying off air, and it was lovely. One of the things that you could do is, to give best wishes to your own younger self. Just to think, okay, how would I nurture my younger self? There's an exercise I often get people to do when they're often going on this particular journey, which is to wish yourself. Wish everybody in your life well. So what I sometimes get people to do is to visualize going back as young as they could possibly remember, and then gently, and the key word here is gently, let all the different situations came up, growing up, family, this, that, childhood, going to school, this, that, and all the situations that come up, just gently wish all the people in your life well. There will be some situations that are unpleasant situations or not things that, what we're doing is that we're wishing those well to say that we're wanting that growth and so on, and that liberates you. So you're wishing this person well, this person well, this person well, this person well, because often you've got a lot of energy stored in that person who you thought was really bad to you, this person who wronged you here. By doing this, you're letting go of that, and just imagine it all floating away like a balloon. So you're wishing them all well, and then you're left freed up in yourself, and wish yourself well. Know that most people who do whatever, most of the time, most people do things with the best intention based on their knowledge at that particular time and based on their own, where they are in themselves. And often there's insecurity. So often most of the stuff isn't personal. It's people locked up in their own stuff. So again, wish yourself well. If there's things that you think that you did badly, you know that you did it with the best intention at that particular time. All of this will start building self-love. Take the sleep well, begin to eat better, give yourself breaks, surround yourself with good people, know that you're worth it. Start visualizing yourself. You might be, if you feel trapped, start visualizing yourself in a good relationship. Start visualize yourself looking good, looking after yourself. That's then giving a new message to your brain of how your life might look. If you're in a really stuck situation, visualize yourself asking for help, and then bit by bit you will. And you were talking about this thing about the importance of saying yes and saying no. Say yes to yourself.
Yes.
And when there's certain situations that don't feel right for you, no. or don't feel that you need to go in there. It might mean that sometimes you've got to take yourself away for a while, this journey, so that you've got that time to nourish yourself. So it might be when everyone else is going out to party, you might think, no, I want this evening in with myself so I can sort things out, write my journal, have an evening with myself, or whatever. Do that. So it does require a little bit of courage and fortitude. But if you do it, honestly, the reward's incredible because you'll just be more confident. You won't be rocked as much by the situations in life, and you'll have a healthier relationship with yourself, and you'll be able to build healthier relationships in absolutely everything you do.
Fully agree with you. And also the power of no. Yes, it can come in the form of saying no to certain people who want your time or certain demands, but also saying no to particular foods that you know aren't right for you, saying no to going into particular situations that you know aren't right for you. You know, the power of no can work in every single scenario imaginable.
Completely. And one tip there is, let's say you're really struggling with some things, bring in, if you're trying to get rid of all the things that are bad sometimes, bring in the good things first. So it might be, let's say you're really struggling for your diet, bring in the vegetables and the fruit. So you might still be having a lot of the chocolate or this or that, but at least then some of the nutrients are coming in. And then your body is going to start to feel that thing of what the good feels like. Oh my goodness, this smoothie was amazing. Oh my goodness, this going for a long walk was amazing. So your body will have that connection because you'll start to feel, not just think stuff. The secret when you're in a really good place is you feel good. You don't just think it, you start feeling it, and you actually have that feeling of it. So you'll start to know what feels right for you, what relationships feel right for you, what foods feel right for you, what people feel right for you in your life, what jobs feel right. Trust that thing. Don't just think about it. See what feels right for you.
Also, as well, you mentioned chocolate. And, you know, there is research that shows that if you eat chocolate that's either 75 or 85% cocoa, then it's actually good for you. So you can still have these things, but just make sure you're going for quality over the quantity of something.
And the relationship to stuff. You know, I have a feeling that, you know, the key thing in life is what's your relationship to everything. So, for example, take food. You know, you've got two different people. One person who eats really well, let's say. Two people who eat, one person's panicking about everything because they're still going to be, there's still stress, there's still dis-ease in who it is that they are. So you've got to, first of all, have a good relationship with everything that you do. Appreciate it, appreciate the food, appreciate whatever. And then you're going to still have a layer of well-being, and then you'll be able to address making the changes that will work for you, because you've got to be on board. The more you're on your own side, the more it is that you're going to be able to make whatever changes it is that you feel you need to make in your life. But you've got to be on board, you've got to be on your side. You do have to be your own best friend. You've got to think, actually, you know what? I at least deserve this. Or if you at that moment don't think, the people who you're wanting to support it is and do. And I often say very, very simply is that imagine yourself that you're like a pregnant mother. If you want the baby to be well, you've got to take care of yourself first. Yeah. So for me, that is the basis of self-love. You've got to take care of yourself first in order for anything you're wanting to birth. I mean, this beyond male, female, whatever. Yes. Anything you're wanting to birth, success, this, taking care of yourself will mean that you'll be able to take care of all the things that you're wanting to birth in life.
And I actually use the metaphor of, you know, when you're on an aeroplane and you watch the safety videos and they say, you know, if anything does happen, put the oxygen mask on yourself first before your child. So it's the same thing, but you just use a different metaphor for it. And it does come back down to you. It really does. And I think the important thing to acknowledge as well is that in the word self-care, care is the key word. Care to self. You can look at it forwards and backwards. So within care, we're talking about kindness, we're talking about compassion, we're talking about looking after yourself, understanding what it is that you need to do for yourself and taking action. Because if you continue to ignore what your body's saying or what your body is trying to tell you, then the only road you're going to head down is depletion.
And the one good news, well, there's lots of good news, but the good thing about this thing about self is this, that it doesn't matter. You will find fulfillment. It's not about achieving this or that. You'll feel so good in yourself. You yourself will be your work of art. That will be your greatest contribution, that you are a wonderful, rich, whole human being. And that's what everyone's going to remember what you were about, where you were lovely, rich, giving human being or not what status you were.
Exactly.
Were you a great person within your spirit and within your soul? And that you could be today.
And that's a great place to end. So Rasheed, as usual, thank you very much. Guys at home, still think about what do you have to do to improve your self-care? That is the question for today, and we're going to continue after the news. Again, you can tweet at Colourful Radio, call 0203 475 6878, or email me via the Colourful Radio website. Rasheed, have a lovely
so
Sunday and week, and I'll see you at the same time, same place next week. Guys at home, will continue after the news. I'm going to leave you with Miracle of Love by Angie Stone and BeBe Winans.